Shall we start now, Lian?
Sure, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
All right. Good evening, everyone. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to the Monsoon session of Literati, Literary Exploration 25-26. I would like to begin by extending a warm welcome to our Head of the Department of English, Dr. Rega Kareem. A special welcome to our distinguished guest speaker, Dr. N.B. Ashley, Associate Professor, Department of English, St. Stephen's College, New Delhi. I take this opportunity to welcome the faculty members of English department as well as the faculty from other departments who have joined us this evening. Literati is one of the flagship initiatives of the Department of English, Maharajas College. This platform takes us on a vibrant journey through literature and cultural studies, fostering critical engagement and meaningful dialogue. Over the years, we have had the privilege of hosting eminent resource persons from both Indian and international contexts, enriching our discussions on a wide array of literary and cultural themes. Today's session, titled Indian Campus Theatre and Shakespeare Dramaturgy Experiential Remarks, will be delivered by Dr. N.P. Ashley. We look forward to gaining new insights through this engaging talk. With that, I'm pleased to invite Ricky to introduce the guest to the audience. Over to you, Ricky.
Thank you, Lian. Good evening, everyone. I'm delighted to welcome you all to the fifth and final talk of Literati, the Literary Exploration Monsoon Cycle, the flagship webinar series of the Department of English at Maharajas College, Ernakulam. Through Literati, we aim to create a space for dialogue, bringing together scholars and thinkers whose works open up new ways of understanding literature, culture, and society. As we conclude this monsoon cycle, we are privileged to have with us a speaker whose academic and creative pursuits deeply embody the spirit of literati. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our distinguished guest for the evening, Dr. N.P. Ashley, Associate Professor of English at St. Stephen's College, Delhi. Dr. Ashley is a dramaturg, translator, and scholar with an MPhil in literary theory from the Central Institute of English and Foreign Languages, Hyderabad, and a PhD in youth culture from the University of Hyderabad. His teaching and research span literary theory, Shakespeare, performance studies, cultural studies, and youth culture. Dr. Ashley has worked as a dramatist for acclaimed productions staged at international festivals, including the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, Brisbane World Theatre Festival, Bharat Rang Mahotsav, and the Abu Dhabi Shakti Theatre Festival. His writings have appeared in leading academic publications such as the Arden Bloomsbury Edition and Shakespeare Journal UK. He is also the conceptualizer of the Kerala Shakespeare Project, curator of the Dayapuram Bashir Museum, and advisor at Habitat Schools UAE. This evening, he will be presenting on the topic Indian Campus Theatre and Shakespeare Dramaturgy Experiential Remarks. On behalf of the Department of English at Maharajas, I extend a very warm welcome to you, sir. We are honored to have you with us and look forward to your reflections and experiences. I would also like to take this opportunity to extend a warm welcome to our head of the department, Dr. Rekha Karan, whose guidance and encouragement continue to inspire and support every initiative of the department. A heartfelt welcome as well to all the teachers, students, researchers, and participants joining us from different locations. Your presence and enthusiasm truly enriches this program. I expect all of you to immerse yourselves in today's session and enrich the discussion with your involvement. Without further delay, let me invite Dr. Ashley to begin the session. Over to you, sir.
Hello. Thank you for that very generous introduction, and thank you for inviting me. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Sorry for the dim lighting. I sort of got to due to terrible traffic. I've got to sort of take this on a route, which is why this complication. Sorry about that. I will, and I'm glad to be here today this evening. It's quite. I think it's a bit of a chat session or something like that where we can think about some of these concerns that bother us um, you know that are part of our academic lives, our social lives, our uh, you know. lives as teachers and as citizens and so on and so forth. One of the today I'm grateful to Maharaja's College English Department and Reem, my friend Reem, who asked me if I could speak on this. It's a good opportunity. It's a great opportunity. Thank you. I'll just quickly, talk about. This is. I'm not. It's not a paper so much. It's just a or an academic presentation like that. It's in the spirit of what I understood as the spirit of literati. We just kind of talking about some of the things. And I thought, one thing I've been working on is Kerala adaptations and afterlives of Shakespeare. And but today I'm talking about campus conversations on Shakespeare, and not just because Shakespeare is an icon or anything, but Shakespeare is a site of some of the explorations that we tend to do, happen to take up as students of literature, as researchers in the field of English studies in India today in the 21st century. The important thing, I think, uh, here is in the title, the question begging term is dramaturgy. And, what is dramaturgy? That's a question that we end up getting asked a lot. An American dramaturg once said, a dramaturg's first job is to explain what a dramaturg does because nobody knows what a dramaturg actually does, which is an interesting kind of formulation. But it's become all the more interesting in Kerala now because for the first time I saw a dramaturg on the title card when the movie Loka had Shanti Vijayan as the dramaturg, dramaturgy Shanti Vijayan. She's also the associate scriptwriter or something, which I found very interesting because this term that's been usually it's a German term, starts with Hamburg dramaturgy, and Brett has worked on this. It's a term that then English, people, British people took it up, and then Americans would call them literary managers or whatever. And in all of this, you have, then it came to India through drama schools. So what is dramaturgy, right? And what does in-campus theater? How do you work with dramaturgy? So dramaturgy is a series of things. It's usually a dramaturg does largely four things. One is dramaturgs can do a particular kind of research that's required to write or adapt a script. So you are a person who's a research associate to the scriptwriter or the director. Second is dramaturg writes the whole thing according to a particular plan. If you're an original scriptwriter, you're a scriptwriter. But sometimes somebody tells you, I this play has 12 characters. I want just two characters, and I want it to be rewritten. So you're writing the script. Then, in certain cases, so you're rewriting the script, right? Third thing is you sort of work as an internal critic for the process. So, you do something and then does it work? Does it not work? Is it in keeping with the original text or the script? So the problem is that there's a script and there's a process, there's a design. So the designer, the uh, you know, uh, the sort of director. These people are all uh, working with an idea, but is it consistent and is it textually consistent? So that's one thing that dramaturgs can do. So they can be researchers, they can be writers, they can be internal critics, and the fourth is you've done something and you see how it's accepted, how you wanted to do it, show it in a certain way. Did it work like that? Did it go like that? So the fourth role of a dramaturg is to work as a mediator between the process and the product, its reception, with the audience actually, the product's reception. Right, so these are the four roles in which. So what is and this is an entity that has come up, that's new in the entertainment industry clearly. but it is and it is new in the it was there in theater school in drama schools, National School of Drama Trishur. They all work with dramaturgs, but not so much elsewhere, right? But it is coming up, and it's coming up in a big way. In it has always been there in one part of theater, which to me is the most important aspect of theater in India today, which is the campus theater. Why do I say campus theater is the most important, aspect of theater? Because again, for different reasons. One is we don't have a very vibrant, regular, systematized sort of theater culture. We have performance practices, but some of them are folk, some of them are government funded, some of them are classical, again government funded. There is other than government funded, which is quite heavy, quite there's a lot, and very little corporate stuff. A lot of our theater happens to be school theater and college theater, which is sadly not very deeply theorized. Why is it not deeply theorized? Because you think, oh, it's just a phase, but it's an important phase because a lot of our actors, a lot of our directors, writers come from school theater or college theater, right? And campus theater. And campus theater is usually seen as just a training ground. It's not very important, right? I mean, they pass out and they do other things. Some of them might go to FTII, some of them might go to School of Drama, but largely it's not something that you need to worry about. Is how you see it. There are no archives, and students come and go, and it's not really seen as an important thing. But it's an important aspect because one of theatre's jobs in a place like India, unlike in Europe, is that it's not just theater, it's all performance practices because you are working with theater as a skill set, right? And theater as part of interpersonal social skills and so on and so forth, right? You are, I mean, like a college doesn't just give you marks, it doesn't just train you in the subject, it also gives you, you have to go and study, you have to go and interact with students because you learn from each other. And theater is a very important part of college life and college, theater, college. Uh, Enterprises in some sense. It can be theater, it can be music, it can be filmmaking, whatever. But there's a certain way in which theater skills are extremely important for telefilm, for right, dance kinds of things, all of that performance practices. So there's a certain way in which it is a good step in all of this. So Indian campus theatre is a very badly archived, sadly researched area, right? With good reasons, but it is also an important part as teachers of English because earlier we would use Shakespeare to teach them values. You teach them Macbeth to say you shouldn't be ambitious. You teach them Othello to say you shouldn't be jealous. You teach that. That's one of the ways in which it used to work. But later we started using Shakespeare for close reading in the Neo-Criticism period. We later started teaching Shakespeare to teach feminism, to teach critical race theory, to teach post-colonialism, to teach majoritarianism, to teach ecological readings, to teach, all kinds of things, right? That is there. But, later, and all of this is important because teachers were the ones who gathered all of this and we gave it to students. So that way it was very important that, teachers brought all of this to classroom and otherwise students wouldn't have that kind of access. But now most of the things that we do are available online. A lot of info. There's no informed teacher is not a great teacher anymore because it used to be because that's available. They can be given a perspective, a set of skills. They can be trained in a set of skills. They can be, given a kind of uh, exposure, perspective. That's all there. But the problem is that the AI and online resources and libraries and put together there's a whole lot of material that's available. That's already there's an information overdose any day. So it's extremely important that we sort of as teachers we understand our role as not as providers of information and reading practice and all, but as people who are extremely focused for on the students, right? I tell my students there are better lectures online. There are better resources online. There are in the libraries. They have scholarship. They have experience. They have a better presentation skills. There's only one thing that they do not have and I have, which is I'm interested in you. I'm interested in your growth, the way you write, the way you think, the way you read, the way you listen, right? So there's that shift that has happened. And with this kind of shift, we are moving towards uh, presentation, performance, spatial aspects. I mean, all literature deals with words, but theatre deals with spoken words. The moment you say spoken words, you are talking about a space. Classroom is such a space. So the point is that there is a certain way in which the classroom reading, classroom enactment, classroom discussions, all of it constitute the text in a new way. So, so I'm merging two things here. One is campus theatre, as a space of skill building, as a space of as a space, as a training ground, as an area which allows you to sort of explore this. Sometimes sample and just leave it at that. Sometimes actually further it, right? On the one hand. On the other hand, I'm also looking at the classroom space where you are looking at okay, this is classroom, and in this classroom, this is these are the things that we have to do. So classrooms became about dramaturgy very recently. I mean, they were about ideas, ideological criticism for a while. Now, also, film studies is a very important part of it, but also is performance studies. And then you start thinking about dramaturgy, the energy of dramaturgy is fundamentally about words, energies, actions, all of it constituting a particular kind of social experience, right? So when you say we are working with a dramaturgical kind of approach, we're saying what is their experience of reading that? Yes, you look at sexuality studies, you look at race theory, you look at gender, you look at all of that, but you also look at the impact of it, the line and all of that. So these this is completely sort of changes the we are basically trying to uh, recreate a particular social experience in class, and on the side also trying to do plays, right? So I'll give you two examples of my work. Just to start off this conversation. One was the time when I joined St. Stephen's College. We were long-standing tradition of doing Shakespeare plays in Delhi. It's 1890. It started as Falstaff Club. In 1924, Reverend Padley founded the Shakespeare Society, the first Shakespeare Society in all of Asia, and at St. Stephen's College, and it has a 100 year or 101 year of tradition of doing a Shakespeare play every year. So in 2011, when I was appointed the staff advisor, we were trying to do Othello, right? Now we said, okay, let's do Othello as this year's thing. So when we're doing that, the first question is, okay, we're just doing Othello. But that doesn't really make much sense because Othello has been around. There's been lots of theatre versions, and there has been a lot of film versions also. So one question that we had, it was an important question, was why are we trying to do this, right? In 2011, when we are trying to do Othello, what are we trying to do? So the first question was, let's do it as let's say that what is the who's the villain? Because what is Iago trying to do? So one question is that perhaps who's Iago working for? Who gets the benefit of all that tragedy, right? Othello killed himself. Othello killed Desdemona. Iago is arrested in Cyprus. He's going to be brought back, and he says, "I'll speak nothing." Finally, So in Othello, who is the beneficiary of the whole thing, right? And the reading that we offered was there was if Desdemona was pregnant with Othello, a black person's, a former slave's, um, you know, uh, child, the biggest uh, threat was for Venetian white supremacy and the dangers of miscegenation because there would be mixing of races that would actually collapse the whole thing. So it's interesting. Okay, now what do we, how do we uh, sort of address that? How do we say that Iago is not the villain? Just like Iago becomes a director like figure who makes Othello dance to his tunes, there is another aspect which is the political unconscious, which is the Venetian white supremacist political unconscious. This is coming from the reading of Stephen Greenblatt, a lot of new historicist reading, and so on and so forth. Anyways, so there were theoretical readings. These are from 1980s, but we wanted to interpret it. You can say these things, but how do you work with this? How do you depict this on stage? How do you embody this? That's a different kind of question, isn't it? So we sort of work with that, and then we said, okay, so we need this Iago story, Iago to be a pawn in the hands of something. So we introduced the sestet, and then there was a thing that what do we do with the lines? That was a problem because doing the lines were an issue because if we write it out, it would be an issue. So we added a little in the beginning, like there was this thing, which is just the opening of the play. After that, we didn't change any lines. We just reallocated lines, and we established that there is Othello and Iago, but there's also a sestet. Now, this reading was bridging what was being done in English classrooms with what was done not as an English department production, but as a college production with students largely from economics, history, and all the other departments, science, physics, and all of that. Right? And in this conversation, my job was to at the staff. I mean, it's very difficult to be a staff advisor in a student-run society because you never know whether you're inside or outside. You are an insider outsider kind of a thing. So what you do is you sort of work with this in a certain way, and you sort of say that can you set it on this the discussion about race has to be initiated. Then you have to keep getting people to write and research on things and give it to you, and then students will come up with their readings, and you have to keep discussing this. So what I found was, as in campus theatre, there's always a dramaturg, who asks questions to the creative process. Then it's also an irritating thing if you don't gel very well, right? I mean, as a dramaturg, I worked for a number of plays, and sometimes it just doesn't work because they don't want any feedback, right? Some people, or they don't want to be questioned. They don't. There's a kind of, they don't want. Some of them brilliantly take it forward. Some of them don't. I mean, I worked as a dramaturg for the longest time with Srijit Ramanan, who gave us talk, I understand, some time ago. And, if you have that kind of wavelength, you can do that. Otherwise, it becomes also difficult. Anyways, the point is that there is a certain way in which this whole, uh, Shakespearean criticism had to be brought to the stage. So, for example, this whole sexuality reading of Iago and Othello, which is a queer reading, so we needed to bring that on stage. And some of the new historicist insights on lower class, entertainment, such as public hanging, that had to be brought. So there's a kind of research, there's a kind of theoretical rigor, there's a kind of, but at the same time, all of this has to fit in with the narrative, fit in with the arguments, the energies, the orientation of the production, the fantasies of the production. Otherwise, it just doesn't work. It just becomes an intellectual exercise at making things difficult. So you start thinking about a text as something to develop, right? Develop in the etymological sense of uncovering. So and slowly each angle, you become a site where other people can come and work with it, right? So there's a certain way in which this happens. So what I'm saying is that this whole dramaturgy is something that happens in classroom a little bit if you teach in a certain way, and dramaturgy is something that happens when you work with campus theatre quite a lot. So if you look at Indian Shakespeare's or Kerala Shakespeare's, it's extremely important that these conversations are minuted, are documented, are archived, are worked with. These are seen as a historical register of conversations. And then what Clifford Geertz calls, it might look like a blink, but it should be seen as oh sorry, yeah, hello, yeah, hello.
Yes, sir, you
Am I
are.
audible? Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So the whole idea is, how do we create a kind of culture of doing this? Because a lot of times we don't think it is possible. It's important to have these things archived and put together. But then if you work with this, if you work with these energies, not just with meanings, not just with arguments, but energies and actions, impulses, you get a certain idea about how you can not just read Shakespeare or any text in that matter, but how text becomes a site that can be developed and made to grow to address concerns, that are not just political, but are ethical, are social, are historical, right? So I think this is an area in which there should be a lot of thought. There is a book called Shakespeare on the university stage, which also addresses some of these concerns. But it's an anthologized volume. Um, so there are books like there are works like that, but I think there's an important reason, there's an important argument to be made about connecting campus theater, classroom, and the conversations that go around which get captured in that space. That's a very important, interesting aspect. I think. I mean, I might take more time, and I've worked on other plays and how every historical moment, like when you're working with a political moment, how that makes its way into a kind of a campus production or into your classroom, and how that not just is directed by a particular academic frame, but it also alters an academic frame, is an interesting question that we can work with. And I think I do hope, like Loka has already shown, there can be a dramaturg, and there should be dramaturgs who do quality research, who do writing and rewriting, who work as critical insiders for productions, who also make sure that there is an academic, intellectual, ideological, political interrogation of artwork, which is very sensitive to the form, to the audience, and it goes into the details of all of this. So through that, if this can be developed, and this has to be done in movies, it has to be done in series, it has to be done in all these areas. But for that, one incubation center is campus theater and classroom teaching, and that's the thought that I leave you with, and then we can figure out. I mean, I'd be happy to ask questions, but like I'm not going into more details because it'll take up more time perhaps. So I have some other experiences which we can of adapting the comedy of errors for School of Drama, or doing Macbeth or Tempest in a very different way. All that we can talk about that. I'm just leaving you with one example. I hope it gives you a sense of what we're talking about. So, as somebody says, youth might be 20 percentage of uh, today, but they are 10 percentage of tomorrow, right? There's that idea, which is not true, but it sounds like a good one line. So, Slowly, what happens in campuses, it takes about 20 years and it flourishes in a certain way. And it is in English studies, in Shakespeare criticism, in English criticism, in this in the history of institutions. If we can develop this area, I think it will be very rewarding. It will be very insightful. It will be very useful when we are asking questions about what colleges or universities or university space or college space can be, ought to be, and how it can develop and how it can grow. This is one area where you can do this. We can have a particular kind of possibility that doesn't get outgrown by or made anachronistic by technological growth and development. Thank you very much for your time. I hope I made sense and I'd be happy to answer questions. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir, for that insightful session. We'll now begin the question and answer session. Participants can either raise their hands or post them in the chat box.
Yeah. If there are no questions, I think we could wrap up, right? Hello.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody's asking some question.
Yes. There is. At what point does a dramaturg overlap with the screenplay writer? Yeah, see, dramaturgs do overlap quite a lot. In terms of because dramaturgy is a textual office. So, like I said, when you are given, like I'll give you an example from my own experience. For example, for there was an Ibsen festival in Delhi, and there was this play by Ibsen called uh, A Lady from the Sea, which was directed by Jyotish and Papinay Trivandrum, Raghutaman and Mala Parvati, the film actors, acted in that. I was a dramaturg for it. What the director said was there are a lot of characters in that play. There are about 10, whatever. So he said, I just want it as a story with two people, not more. So then it won't make sense with two people. So you have to rewrite the whole thing. So in some sense, but I am still rewriting Ibsen's play. That I'm not I'm not writing something original, but yes, I do have to bring in things because to make connections. I brought in some poetry here and there because because otherwise sometimes you just can't. You have to make it. The transitions weren't working, so you introduce something and things like that. So you do that kind of work, right? The other thing is this play I had done for School of Drama, the Comedy of Errors. It is called Abathangada Yedigali. And there, what we did was, it was a story that Comedy of Errors is, as you know, it's every Golmaal Hindi movie. It's a very unbelievable story. When I read it, I was like, this is an unbelievable story. Why does the director? It was not my choice. It was director Sri Raman's choice. So he said, okay, we want to do this let's do this. And I read it and it's an impossible text to do because it won't be one. I'm not very, familiar with comedy. We do different kinds of things. And I don't think she's also done that kind of comedy. So I was very worried that that would, it's an unbelievable story. So how is this going to work? But I found something very interesting. I was traveling and I found I had to finish it, before I met him, and then found myself standing and reading the final part. So I said, whatever else I might say, there is something in this play which is quite interesting, gripping. So I was like, this play is an unbelievable story, but it is also gripping. There's something about it. So what do we do? It's like a Priyadarshan kind of thing. So we started asking this question. So I said, the gripping stories that are unbelievable are basically Arabian Nights stories. So let's set it in 11th century uh, Baghdad, 10th, 11th century Baghdad, and then write it, the whole thing. So we change the characters, and then we put it up as, you have to have Persian, Arabic kind of thing, that enmity was worked on, names were given differently, everything had to be rewritten. So in that, yes, there's a lot of stuff like you have to do research, you have to find out because you have to be, you have to find words, you have to find, things that were possible at that time. It it doesn't need to be true. It needs to be plausible. It could have happened. That's how you have to create it, right? So everything has to, and it has to be believable. It has to connect emotionally, all of that. So then you're rewriting it, and so you took from things that you knew from Arab culture, or you read up, or you also took from Shakespeare sonnets, and you took from different parts, and you created a kind of story. So it is you're bringing together, and sometimes you actually have to write it, right? Like I remember using a Persian Malayalam translation of a Persian couplet to point out a particular scene. So things like that will. So you are writing, you're conceptualizing, you are you are modifying things. So there is a way in which it overlaps, but it's not entirely a writer. See, the problem is that the big issue with director centricism in theater, or director centricism, author, as film theory calls it, in film theory, is that it's never like that. In fact, even authors are not singular. I mean, we know this from textual criticism. We know this from, you write, you don't go and publish it. There's an editor, there are marketing concerns, there are reviewers, there are peer reviewers, there are readers. There's a whole lot of process that goes into it. So this singular figure is, in one piece, is kind of invented by criticism. It didn't exist. I mean, some of Shakespeare's plays, some of the scenes aren't written by Shakespeare. I'm not even talking about 18th century editors who rewrote stuff. I'm talking about comedians and people like that who actually, uh, in some sense, improvised and some scenes because they were popular, right? Like it's a famous example of Will Kemp improvising the Potter scene a series of times, and only one gets picked up for the play. So it's not like there's a singular writer, because if you see the interviews of all these Priyadarshan or Siddiq Lal, and all, a lot of these are improvised by actors, Jagadi or whoever, right? So there's a certain thing. So to say that dramaturg is that doing this kind of work, dramaturg his work is done by different people. Sometimes the dramaturg is doing a director's job, or sometimes the screenplay writer's job. Sometimes, like what you call a script doctor's job. It's all there. Yeah, but it is important. That's what I'm saying. That kind of an office allows us to engage with different aspects. Camera, like, or in theater lighting, in theater music, in theater space design, in theater props, all of that. So these are all extremely interesting, right? So that's a way in which we can build this. So there is an overlap, yeah, very important overlap. Let me just see the next. There's another question I think in the chat box. One second.
Yes, sir, we have one more question.
Yeah. So the question is, what mind is okay? Now, uh, what teaching strategies do you use to engage students with complex theoretical framework? Teaching strategies. I don't know. I mean, if we're talking about theater. One thing is to make them understand that it is not meaning that you're working on. You're working with energies and actions and impulses and so on. Space is important. So I sort of give them one text and then give them an intention, like a context, and say, you don't have attendance. You have to go get the permission from the principal. You go there, and all that you have is this line from, you know, Barth, Laurel Langbarth, when I say I give and say, or anything, right? Or I say, you use this passage by Foucault and do a gossip or something like that. And once they do it, they understand that, language works in a different way. So, and space, I keep readjusting the space a lot. And sometimes, see, I think as a teacher, our biggest job is also not to be boring, is to engage them. And sometimes you have all the prepared, you have all the notes, and it just doesn't work because they're not interested. And the biggest challenge is, we can't say they're not interested because it's our job to get them interested. That's our primary job. So, initiate them. So that way you keep working, you fail a lot of times. As Beckett says, it is to do it again to fail better. That's all that you're doing in teaching, right? So you keep engaging, you keep engaging people, you keep asking them to speak their mind. You keep asking them to say, you are, your thoughts matter, you matter, right? And how do we engage? But also not to say anything is okay because you have to be nuanced, you have to be rigorous, you have to be comprehensive, you have to follow a logic, you have to, so those kinds of things you have to keep working on it. And that's what I try. I mean, this is just my experience, something that might work in certain ways, that might not work in certain ways. I think one of the things we do need is, what has worked a lot for me is talking to teachers from other disciplines about their strategies. I've had these long conversations with some of the finest colleagues from science departments, and they tell you things, and that's very interesting. What they do, how do they do this, and all that. So that those kinds of things work, right? And always, make classroom an honest, safe space, and where they don't need to say all kinds of, fancy things, not impressive things, but be honest, that sort of a thing. That's what I sort of try and do. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah, I
what
have a
inspired you to
question.
focus? Yeah, sorry. What inspired you to focus local research on youth culture in Kerala during the 60s and 70s? That's because in Kerala, like, everyone was talking about 70s and everyone was nostalgic about 70s. I mean, now everyone is nostalgic about 1996, I think. I am from the 1996 10th batch. I mean, it was not very fantastic. So I often felt that I had a problem with the 60s understanding the nostalgia was really too much, right? And so I wanted to theoretically engage with what is the 60s, right? What is this? I mean, in Kerala, we call it Ezhuvathugal. It's basically abroad, you say 60s. So Tariq Ali's book, The Street Fighting Years, it's the 60s, the autobiography of the 60s. It's actually 1967 to 1975. That's the years I have also studied. So I was thinking that, everything was great and there was excellence, there was student commitment, there was this, but that's also the time when a lot of, there is Naxalite movement everyone talks about, but we also forget that the political killings between Kannur, between CPM and RSS in Kannur also started in the same year, in 1968, with the same Ganesh Bidi place. We remember, land reforms is a great, kind of achievement, but at the same time, this whole idea around, uh, lottery came with that same thing. There is a certain green revolution works for certain things, but at the same time, for example, we talk about egalitarianism, but we also forget kind of Dalit and Adivasi kind of issues there. And I always wondered, in a society like Kerala, which is doing very well in many ways. Gulf started around that time. So I wanted to look at all of those, and I studied the assembly debates. I looked at some of the other documents, and I studied the movies. I studied Swayamvara, literature, woman you mentioned. I looked at Kalam, Delhi, Sakshi, Alkutam, Khasak, and all that. And Khasak, my argument was we talk about it as an existential book. Can we look at it, look at caste in that, in a way, and its connection with the Yerba movement. So those were the kinds of questions that I thought, because there's so much. Like I remember in about 104 issues, there were about 80 articles around the 70s, something from the 70s, which just keep coming up in a lot of this. So I was a little concerned about the sensibility that you're getting stuck with 1960s. 1960s is for 60 years ago. Not just in Kerala, it's also happening across the world. Like, we talk about Foucault, Derrida, and all the other people. That's actually 60 years old. So we do need to understand, yeah, they've given us wonderful things, but that's like, Althusser and all the others, Gramsci and all, but this is also old in a certain way, and it's a new world, right? It's the baby boomer generation thinks that you're talking about. So I wanted to sort of work with that. But now, in fact, I continue to be interested in Kerala, but not so much youth cultural studies, right? It's called Bells of the Blue Hour, Models and Expressions of um, Campus Youth Culture 1967 to 1975. And Blue Hour is the time when you don't know if it's going to be a day or night, like, that evening time or in the morning time. You don't know if it's morning or evening. There's that time, right? That's what you call a blue hour. So I'm trying to theorize that in that way. So this is where I started. Like, our parents' generation, which we had to historicize and understand for what it is, rather than thinking of it in romantic terms, ideologizing it, or thinking of it as a mistake, to be forgotten. You needed to think of it as history, as a necessity, history as necessity, and then create a concept about it. That was kind of my intention. That was my interest. I don't know if it actually works. Makes sense.
So we have one more question, sir.
So,
Yeah, that's fine.
do you think Indian campus theatre has developed its own form of dramaturgy distinct from Shakespeare influence?
Yeah. Indian campus theatre has not been so much about, Shakespeare actually. It's in metropolitan campus spaces such as in Stevens or Presidency or Doon School, you might have a Shakespeare setting kind of thing. A lot of colleges in Kerala, we don't have that kind of a Shakespearean kind of tradition, right? So my argument with that would be Shakespeare dramaturgy in campus theatre. It's under recorded, it's unarchived, under archived, under studied everywhere. In India, I mean, we are working with this just because as teachers of English, we end up working with Shakespeare, so we end up developing it in certain ways. But there are people who developed in different ways, even in Kerala. Then you would talk about teachers, right? For example, if you look at MP Paul in SB College, who then got who left SB College or dismissed from there and so people like that who developed in a certain way. So my argument is that Indian campus dramaturgy is not at all theorized, and like we said, we have to start explaining what dramaturgy is. But Shakespeare, as this, like, let's do Shakespeare, because teachers used to be actors. There were these greatly loved teachers who were basically performer teachers. The problem with the performer teacher, the great thing is it's very exciting, and they have a task. The big task is they have to you tell people about a Cleopatra when that name made no sense. There was no YouTube, there was nothing, there was no reference point. this person had to come up and make people feel good or bad or sad about it, or at least, sort of impress them, right, in a certain way. If you've seen Karthik Kuda, the scene where Bharat Gopi does that scene from Julius Caesar, that kind of moment, right? So there's a kind of dramaturgy of performance that developed, which has its own value. But the problem with it's great. I mean, I'm not even its own value because that's how a generation of people studied this, and I wouldn't be dismissive of it. But the problem with the performer teacher is only giving one explanation, one aspect of it. Because we as English teachers of English, living in a post-theory era, we do know that there are multiple, kind of explanations or readings possible. So then it becomes complicated, right? And so when you do campus theater and that kind of dramaturgy, you have to mix all of this. But at the same time, it's never just what is available. It's also what they create in the process. Like a play is not just what, okay, this is how we have decided here, this is how this works. No, it gets developed in a certain way. It gets it gets improvised in the space in itself. So Indian campus theater is different from, I mean, dramaturgy is a very brief kind of thing, and Indian Shakespeare's, you can only think of it in connection with, uh, if you're talking about theater campus, right? All the experimental work happened in schools of drama and English departments and so on and so forth. So if you just remove this, it's going to be a very, there might be one Kathakali year that somebody did, or a Chautanada and Julius Caesar somebody did. It's not going to be, it's just going to be exotic stuff. It's not going to be beyond anything. It won't be able to do anything comprehensive if you don't include campus theater and a lot of times reading lists and classroom teaching and student production. So that is where, so we the British system of theater is very different in India, because in Indian theater we take up anyone and we do our own things. In Britain, a lot of times you can't do that because you have copyright issues with the new author, so they work with the old people because of that, and it's a lot more time taking kind of process. So there is an Indian campus sort of, and I say Indian campus biggest star is in some sense might be Bertolt Brecht, not William Shakespeare. So, and who's also a dramaturg. So, we can look at how that developed and all that. That's a different kind of process, I would say. Yeah, if that makes sense. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah.
sir.
Um, Hi. Can I just make a comment? Hello.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Quickly, as I have to leave now. So, yeah, yeah, I'd like to hear your comment. And can we stop with that? Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Is that okay?
thank you so much for bringing up this idea of dramaturgy for a serious discussion. Just resonating what had happened recently in a classroom. We have actually accidental death of an anarchist in our syllabus. So we were discussing, like, the students were discussing, how to make this they how to stage this play. Like, I was asking them if they can stage this a part of the play. So they were like, how to take a particular part of the play. So we while we were discussing the play, we were I was going back and forth, and always like in bringing up this example of Tony Mudalam Sakshim, particularly when we see, like, when how they are bringing up different versions of the case of the murder of the murder. So we were discussing, like, how they are changing the FIR, and how satirically this how effectively the idea of the element of satire has been used in the play. So while we were having this discussion, we were just saying that, like, maybe we can extrapolate the play into a lot of things that are happening around us, because the play is actually composed of a lot of newspaper documents, like newspaper reports and lawyers, different versions that the lawyers came up with about the death, about the death of the anarchist. So we were thinking of, like, why don't we extrapolate it into and make perhaps make some changes and bring up perhaps our own way of not changing the screenplay entirely, but maybe introducing a little bit of things here and there. And when the students asked, like, what do we do about the lackings, we don't have a lot of things with us to particularly when we present it on the stage. So we were like, maybe we can draw certain things, those things that we don't have, particularly window. Window is an important element in the play. So what do we do? So maybe we'll draw a window, or we'll make some posters and we'll keep them, we'll hang them here and there. So these kinds of little discussions took place in the classroom. So I was just thinking, okay, we maybe we were carrying the idea of dramaturgy without understanding or without having much discussion about this component.
Yeah, that's always the case. I mean, it's really true because we are always doing this. That's what I'm saying. But we need to pay attention to it. At least scholarship needs to pay attention to it. There is just no understanding. That is the problem. Yeah, can we stop? I also have to get into something. I'm sorry. I'm rushing. Thank you so much. You've been a fantastic audience, and I hope I made some sense in the whole scheme of things. Thank you, viewers. So yeah. We could if we could stop it there. Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, sir.